we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett, episode 4 tonight, The Gathering Storm. We're going to go through our review and then a spoiler talk and breakdown of the episode starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
I'm Colin.
And I'm Kendra.
So, the spoiler-free summary of this episode is Boba Fett partners with Fennec Shand. So, Colin, you want to start with your spoiler-free thoughts about the episode?
Sure. I think that this episode was better than the last episode that we saw. I think we left off at we talked about it last week where it was uneven. There were some parts that really didn't make sense. I think that this episode was much more consistent. There was a consistent kind of beginning, middle, and end. Although there were some parts of it that was still a little jarring at times. But by the same token, I think, again, more consistency throughout this, and then there was a good story throughout, and then there's still some puzzles that still need to be revealed, and then also there was a very big interesting puzzle that might come about in the next episode. So it was a really nice kind of almost cliffhanger at the end in some instances, and I think I really much more enjoyed this one than last week's episode in terms of the pace, in terms of the beginning, middle, and end, and also the timing of it overall. Even though most of it dealt with the past a little bit, but in any case, that's my initial thoughts on the episode.
Yeah. Conjure?
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode as well. I think it sort of answered some questions, and I think explained why Boba Fett is the person he's trying to be in the present. They sort of closed the loop on the Tusken Raider story, and I felt like that gave us more insight into the person he's becoming and the leader he aspires to be. And I feel like in this episode, you sort of see him really be more. Because I think the last episode, we were like, he's getting his ass kicked. What is happening here? He's not the bounty hunter the fighter that we expect him to be. So yeah, this sort of, I think, answered some questions. And Colin said sort of opened up more questions. But overall, much more action. I think a better story than last week's episode.
Yeah, I like this episode better than last week as well. I don't know if I like it as much as the second episode. I think the second episode is still like the high watermark for me. This episode at least made more sense to me. I think last week what I said is that they left things undone or unresolved in the last week's episode, and that wasn't the case here. We got some resolution to some storylines. This is part of this is a little bit of a bridge as well, because it's bridging the present day or the current storyline. So it's a bridge between what's going to happen at the end. We have 7 episodes, so we have 3 more episodes left. So this was, when we're talking about the present day or the present day story as opposed to the flashbacks, this is more of a bridge episode. But we got some finality in the flashback, and we get a better understanding of Boba's motivation in the present day, which is satisfying, because we are 4 episodes in and we still don't know why he's doing what he's doing in the present day. And we finally get that answer in this episode, which is helpful. Maybe it's a lot later than they probably should have done. In most shows, you know why the protagonist wants to do what they're doing far earlier. So maybe that's why also people have had some issues with the show. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with the show per se with the story itself. I think maybe the structure is a little weird. A lot of people have said, and some people have said, and I think I agree with this, maybe doing the flashbacks in the middle of the present day wasn't the best structural idea. They should have just started in the past and just moved in chronological order. So you had an understanding of why he's doing what he's doing. But I think that they put themselves in the corner, because at the end of the Mandalorian episode, the season finale, they had Boba taking over for Tuna, so maybe they felt like they had to tell the present day story at the same time. But I feel like they didn't have to do that. They could have showed the present day story and then immediately did the flashback, and then the first 3 episodes could have been just flashback, and then they could have caught up to present day. And I think people would have been fine with that. But the switching back and forth maybe was a little bit confusing to people. And also, after they had done that, we would have gotten the best parts of the show, because the show is definitely better in the flashbacks to me anyway. Stuff that's going to be good for I think the stuff that's going to be really cool in the present day is going to show up in the rest of the season, because I think the rest of the episodes are probably going to all be present day. So yeah, that's what I think of this episode. It's better than last week, but I think that the structure of the show probably makes the entire show suffer. But I don't think the structure is going to be the structure for the first 4 episodes isn't going to be a structure for the last 3.
I do just have one more question before we go into spoilers. Is for either of you, Chandra or Nathan, is that whether or not they made a good creative choice to have the flashback being done while he's in the back of the bank. Because to me, I think that was very creative and very clever of them to do. But like you said, it may be jarring at times. So I want to hear your thoughts about that part, whether or not it's a good creative choice or not from either of you. And before we go to spoilers.
I actually liked it because I thought it leaves you questioning, right? You do have to sit with the show through a few episodes to get to that point where you sort of realize the point, right? Because in this episode, I think you see why they used that, or why it was a useful device, because he's healing in the tank. And so in the first few episodes, he's having these flashbacks and his mind is going through reliving his past, and his path to get to where he is, while his body is also going through healing and going through transformations. I think it comes together in the end, but I think when you're watching the first few episodes, you don't get that sense until this episode, I think, is where you realize, oh, okay, now it all comes together. And I didn't find it confusing. I think the disconnect is maybe between the pacing between the past and the present, and maybe is what's more jarring than anything. But I thought it was pretty creative because he only has the flashbacks when he's in the tank. So maybe it's a little bit of foreshadowing. They were trying to tell you, like, hey, while he's in the tank and is physically healing, his mind is also healing and working through what he's experienced.
Yeah, I don't mind this tank. I think that's fine for what it is. If you're going to do flashbacks, having the flashbacks tied to the fact that he's healing was fine. I think that what Chandra was saying, I don't think people found the flashbacks confusing. They just found like it was slow, like the parts of it that are slow, and it was a little disjointed. And if we got what we got in this episode, say in the second episode, in the second episode, because if they cut this whole show differently, if they edited it differently and just had the flashbacks, I think we would have gotten all the flashbacks done in 2 episodes. And by the end of the second episode, you would understand where he was going, and then you would go from there. And the last 2 episodes would have been present day. So you could have edited it completely different and not have the Bacta tank at all. So the fact that they kept having flashbacks, I guess having that as a narrative device makes it make sense why we're flashing back, because he's flashing back in his head and reviewing certain things. So I didn't have an issue with the Bacta tank. I maybe have an issue with the fact that they're doing flashbacks at all.
I think the problem you would run into there, though, is that we've seen him not be himself. So I think if you do it that way, then you'd maybe have to lose that part of the narrative where the flashbacks are happening while he's healing. And then in the present day, you sort of see him like going to see the mayor, or all these things that he's done in the first 3 episodes where he hasn't, and then the fight where he was yanked out of the tank last week. So I guess you would have to just restructure it as a whole, because we've been seeing him getting stronger and maybe trying to find his place, and that happens with each or after each round in the back.
When you say not being himself, what do you mean? You're talking about in the present day or in the past? In
the present day, right, where he's not, because I felt like in this episode when he seemed.
Oh, you mean he seemed not as strong? Yeah, I'm not saying that there was the Bacta tank.
Maybe we should get into spoilers so we can talk.
Yeah. We should definitely do that. So we're gonna break into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, go see the episode. We all like the episode, but spoilers ahead.
Yep.
After this point, all right. So I think that having the Bacta tank is fine. They could have done that in the present day, and he could have just gone into the Bacta tank. They didn't necessarily have to just cut to the past. We could have just seen in the present day that he was weak, and he needed, every time he had those interactions, he had to go to the Bacta tank, and they could have just cut to another scene in the present day. I think the structure of it having him go into the flashbacks is what the issue is. But I understand what you're saying. That he wasn't as strong as you expect him to be based upon what I guess the lore that people have been building up in their head for the last 20 years or whatever, or 40 years or whatever. So yes, they would have had to show that he was still recovering from the Sarlacc pit, but I don't know that they necessarily had to couple those things, the flashbacks, with the fact that he was healing together. The fact that they decided to do it that way, which is, I guess, fine, but I think it would have been more effective if they had just started in the past and then gone to the present. Because now that we're talking about spoilers, in this episode, we see Fennec mentions that when they try to recover his Bhaskar, she says that you should just give up on it. It did its purpose. It stopped you from being dissolved, and then your skin is being burned.
My armor's not down there.
It served its purpose. It saved you from the acid.
So we saw, if that was the last scene in the flashbacks, if they had restructured it differently, then we would see that he was scarred up and that he needs to continue to heal. That's why he's going to BAFTA tanks, and that would have been fine to show why he was weak in the present day. To me, anyway. Yeah.
That actually was longer than I thought in terms of the question. It went into spoilers as well, which is very interesting kind of question. Yeah, it got right into spoilers. Yeah. And the other thing that was interesting to me was that it actually, because the droid then said, now that we're in spoiler talk, the droid then said that you're completely healed. So it goes back to your thinking, Nathan, in the non-spoiler part where it said, yeah, that's probably the end of it anyway. Yeah. That's the end of flashbacks. That's like the demarcation point, and from there is probably going to be, you saw it because the backstory seemed complete anyway. Because it reminded me a little bit of Deadpool, where they had the flashbacks and stuff, and then it's, now you're all caught up. You're all caught up to the ending of The Mandalorian season 2 with the post-credit scene. So you're there now. So now we can keep moving forward in the timeline.
The last scene, I think, when he's pulled out of the liquid, or is it the BAFTA tank? Wasn't it then in the sands at like Tatooine or something like that? Like after they were trying to. I thought that was did they show? Yeah. I don't think they showed him shooting Fortuna. Did they in the flash?
They did.
Yeah,
they did show it. They did show it in this episode as well. So they showed pretty much the whole post-credit scene from Mandalorian. So they showed the whole thing.
Basically, as you said, the robot says that you're all healed. So that was a indication to the audience, since we've been using the BAFTA tank as a device to go back in time, that we're not going to go back. That we're not going to go back in time anymore, which is what I was saying. Or what I was saying earlier, that the next 3 episodes are probably going to be all present day, which is great. So this episode, now that we're talking about spoilers, it basically goes back to, as the spoiler free thing says, how Boba Fett partners with Fennec Shand. So we get the other part of the story about how she was saved by him, which we saw her get shot in the first season, I think, of The Mandalorian, and then she showed up in the second season, not dead. But we also saw the first season when she was shot, someone come to her, and we didn't know who it was. I guess some people on the internet knew who it was, or suspected who it was, because you hear jangling, like spurs. And apparently that's what Boba Fett sounds like, but he didn't have his arm. But it doesn't make sense now. They painted themselves into a corner, because he didn't have his armor when he found her. So he wouldn't have made that sound when he walked up on her. But whatever. But yeah, see, he saves her. He brings her to a modification shop. That the mod guy who was in that episode was played by a musician named Thundercat. I'm not familiar with his. Really? Artist. Yeah, I'm not familiar with his work, but he's called Steven Thundercat Bruner. He did a good job. It was for a short amount of time he was in the episode.
This woman is about to die. Well, you should have started your bet.
So I guess the kids in his crew now aren't the only people that mod themselves. We also know Luke has an artificial arm, and of course Vader is, as Obi-Wan says, more machine than man. So there's a lot of people who have mods in the universe. But yeah, that was pretty cool. I think that whole scene was pretty cool. Also, the scene, I think the best part for me was the infiltration of the palace part. Yeah. So there was a funny bit in the kitchen, and then you got to see Ming-Na Wen really cut loose when Boba was trying to get the ship started. Like, she took down all those dudes. It was just with her. Yeah, she was amazing. Yeah.
It left me wanting like a show just about Fennec Shand. Like, yeah, so she's.
Yeah, she's really fascinating in that. It's just it's because we did see her. For those of you that don't know, she was in the Clone Wars episodes. I think was she in? Was she? Yeah. Oh, she was also in Bad Batch as well. Yes.
I don't think she's been in the Clone Wars. No. She showed up in Bad Batch.
Oh, okay, Bad Batch. You're right. Bad Batch. Sorry, I get it all mixed up. It's like an extended season of Clone Wars, anyway. Yeah. But yeah, she was in there, and then this was back in the summer when we were speculating, like, what is her age, basically? Did she age all that time? Like, how much did she age or did not age at that time? I think you speculated that she was in her 20s, or like early 20s at that time, Nathan. She was in the Bad Batch, and like now she's of age of Ming-Na Wen's age, pretty much, which makes sense of her still being like totally awesome and all that.
I think her age... the ages are all over the place, because if you saw, I think the beginning of the prequels, Boba is a boy, right? Because Obi-Wan goes and he visits Kamino, and he's a boy then. During the Clone Wars, he's still a boy, sort of a teenager. But that whole period between the prequels, the beginning of the prequels and the end of the prequels, Obi-Wan is a. Does Obi-Wan go to Kamino in the first or the second movie? I think it's the second. Okay, by the second movie at the second movie, Skywalker.
Second movie also.
But Anakin himself, he's like
Anakin is already like in his early 20s, maybe.
But in that episode 2, Boba Fett is still a boy. Then by the end of the prequels, Boba Fett might have been maybe in his late teens, and then we fast forward 20 years, because Luke is like a baby at the end of the first prequels. Luke is like in his early 20s, or he's a teenager. I think it's 20. It's supposed to be 20, right? 19 or 20. And in the New Hope, so he's definitely older than Luke. But he's not, and he shows up in those movies. He shows up in the Return of the Sith, or not Return of the.
He showed up in Empire Strikes Back, but it's like a side character, bounty hunter, and then you see him also in Return of the Jedi as well, with him dying in the Sarlacc. So his scenes were very short, like very short. So that's where the Legend of Boba Fett comes in because of that. But also he appeared in several video games as well. And there was one game for those of you that were gamers back in the day. There was a game called Shadows of the Empire, and it was like a Han Solo-esque character. His name was Dash Rendar. He was fighting Boba Fett. So one of the levels was that you get to fight Boba Fett in that. So that's like not canon anyway. So just for you to know, that's not canon to what Disney has established for Star Wars. But at the same time, his legend grew through video games, through just like him appearing in the originals, having bringing Han Solo's body to Jabba the Hutt. So it's this. So now we're just in this present day, we're just trying to fill in all this lore of Boba Fett and trying to make him a deeper character than the kind of like the mystery cowboy-esque kind of guy that was established in the original Star Wars. So that's pretty much like where we're at with his character.
and that's fine. The issue is, like you were talking about, but the age though. So like he would have been maybe 20. Sorry, not 20. Maybe 35. So if you say he's maybe 15 during the Clone Wars, you fast forward another 20 years for when Luke is a 20-year-old. He's 35. After he gets dropped in the Sarlacc pit, he's maybe 40. So when he gets out of the Sarlacc pit, he wouldn't be 60. So there's an issue with his age as well, but there's also an issue with Fennec Shand age. They haven't figured out exactly what age they're supposed to be based upon what they have established already. But I don't know.
I mean, they're not really fully human, right? It's like you never know. Boba Fett is pretty much like a clone anyway. Yeah, it's a clone, so you don't know whether or not clones age fast. His thing was that he did not age faster.
He was enforced. He was enforced. Yeah, he was a natural clone. He was enforced grown.
But at the same time, you can make an argument that maybe in outer space, long time ago, far away, because cloning, there's some advanced age. Who knows? That
or the fact that he was being he was being digested by the Sarlacc. So maybe that's what's aged him. That's what aged him.
Exactly. I would be. I mean, anyone that's like getting swallowed up by a monster like that definitely would be. Definitely would age a little bit, and all the anxiety of being digested for 1,000 years would age.
Okay, so maybe tomorrow Morrison is 61, but Boba Fett is like 42. Okay,
we get that when Ming-Na win as well. When we posted her birthday
Ming-Na
about a month ago,
doesn't look 58 though.
She's like everyone was like, oh my gosh, she doesn't look 58, and it's like, yeah. To
have older actors playing characters whose age is who you could believe that are younger than the actors themselves, because typically it's the reverse, right? You get somebody who's younger and
although he's been moving like a 61-year-old over the last couple episodes, but he's also been acting like he's injured. He moves a lot faster in this. By the time he comes out, he looks very strong. He looks very. I hope I look that good at 61. Yeah. So
this time when he came out of the tank, I was like,
exactly,
And of course, there's that meme that's on. There was this meme that was funny where they mentioned that he looked like Uncle Fester from the Addams Family, and I was like dying. I was like, and it was like I think it was like on Twitter where it was like a Boba Fett Twitter page, and it said, "Stop sending me this stuff." It's just so funny. It was just so funny, and but seriously, he really is doing all of that stunt work and action scenes and all that. And Conjure, you're right. It's really great. I think that several articles did mention that they are like more advanced in terms of their age, but then they're still doing all these things, all these action scenes, like playing like quote unquote younger characters. So it's good. It's good that they are progressing in that regard and not just discarding quote unquote older actors. I mean, it still happens in Hollywood, unfortunately, but particularly for Star Wars, you do have two more advanced age individuals that are playing these roles that are becoming iconic. Well, in the case of Boba Fett, it's already iconic. So it is a very good thing to have.
All right. So what else happened in this episode you guys want to talk about? And one thing that I marked, because we talked about this last week, it's very unlikely that speeder bike gang took down the Tusken Raiders, and Fennec Shand mentions that.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this last week, where it's like they probably had some help from the Pikes, and Fennec was like, it's highly unlikely that some biker gang was able to take out some Tusken Raiders.
Speed bikers defeated Tuskens? That's highly unlikely.
It's in their name. Tusken Raiders. They do combat stuff all the time. The only reason they were having issues with the Pike is because the Pike were speeding past them at high speeds and trying to pick them off with sniper rifles. But they're good in combat. So they definitely... I think that other shoe hasn't dropped yet, but they keep hinting that the Pikes were probably the ones behind the decimation of that tribe.
Oh, yeah. She totally called that. She totally figured. She's like... And again, he got his revenge, right?
Yeah, he did. He did. Definitely did. That was pretty. You do feel bad about those bikers because Boba Fett did steal their bikes. I think Nathan, you weren't here for this when I mentioned this to Condra, that it reminded me of Terminator 2. It was like this guy coming into the bar and like stealing all this stuff, and so it was just so hilarious in some ways. But then the bikers, they get crushed. By his ship, basically just got destroyed by his ship. Yeah. So they probably did not deserve it, but it's been established that they are like. They were harassing that couple, and then in the previous episode, and they were, I think they were robbing someone's home. So yeah, they deserve that as well. Even though you felt bad for them.
I mean, because they escalated with the Tusken Raiders. Because he stole their bikes. He didn't kill them. A whole group of people.
Oh, that's true. But it's the Pikes.
No. I think it was them, but the Pikes were behind them.
Oh, okay.
Like they probably armed them with like gear that they probably wouldn't have had otherwise. But I didn't feel bad for them at all because he stole their bikes because he saw them harassing, like stealing people's stuff and robbing their homes when he was with the kid in the desert. That's the first time he saw them. So that's why he stole their bikes. And they definitely, even if they had the backing of the Pikes, even if it was at the Pikes' command, they went and they destroyed that village, and they because they tag things. They established earlier on that they tag things. It's satisfying. I don't know if it wasn't as satisfying to me as it was to him, but it was satisfying to see him blow them up. Because we don't really only see Boba Fett kill people in the past. We never seen him slap. We haven't even seen him really raise his voice or slap someone in the present. So I don't know.
That is true. That is true, because even Fennec actually is very interesting that he said a line that something along the lines of power absorbs a vacuum, basically. And he said that, and then Fennec was shocked. It was like, really? You said that? And then it was like, it does, maybe because he felt as though he was fully, like, he's now fully healed. So he can really be the big badass that he really is. Maybe that's the case. That why last week you meant, Nathan, that he was so beaten up and stuff like that. It's probably because he wasn't fully healed yet, and now he's like, okay, I feel confident that I'm fully healed. All the stuff that's in my head, I've reconciled in some ways. I've had some closure. Now I'm ready to like rock and roll. So maybe that's probably like he's announcing his presence through the destruction of the biker.
Yeah. So like
maybe.
The other thing that I was thinking as you were talking there is that I think if this show in general was a little bit better, if it was like firing on all cylinders every single week, you wouldn't necessarily have the space to nitpick certain things. But because not every episode has been like super stellar, you start picking it apart because they've established in this show that he's weak because he's still healing. But they also established in The Mandalorian that he can still kick ass. Because that's what happened in that episode. He took down all those stormtroopers. So I don't think I would care as much if all these episodes were great. They're all good, but they're not great. So you start picking apart, and you're like, this is what I know from here, and this is what I know from here. And it's also what nerds do in general. True. So I think if all the episodes in general were at a higher caliber, that people wouldn't be picking them apart as much. And again, and like I said last week, it's not a CW show, but it's still not. We haven't gotten back up to the high water mark of the second episode again yet, and hopefully the last 3 episodes will be great. This episode was directed by Kevin Tancharoen, who hasn't really directed a lot of stuff. He wrote the Mortal Kombat movie, and it wasn't the one that came out last year. It was one of the other ones. And he also has directed a couple episodes of genre stuff, like I think I forget the name of off the top of my head. The Marvel show that got canceled that was on Fox. Hellstorm with 1L. So he hasn't done a lot of things. So I guess this is a really good big opportunity for me. I think it was a better episode than the last episode. And Robert Rodriguez is far more famous than he is, so he did a better job than Robert Rodriguez did in the second episode. Jon Favreau wrote this one again. I think the note that I have here from Wikipedia is that he wrote all the episodes, but Dave Filoni co-wrote the 6th episode with him. So maybe we'll see something interesting show up in the 6th episode. Since
maybe Ahsoka Tano. I don't
maybe.
know. I mean, he has an affinity for Ahsoka, so you never know.
We got a hint in this episode, a heavy hint in this episode that Din Djarin is going to show up in the next episode or soon, because they played his music cue. They played his music cue when Boba saw the flare and then walked over to Fennec's body, but they also played his music cue at the very end where Fennec is like, if you have credits, we can buy muscle. And then we heard his music cue.
Credits can buy muscle, if you know where to look.
So he's definitely going to show up at some point in this show as some of the muscle to help him out.
So I do have a quick question about the muscle. Going back to, what was that? Black Chris.
His name is
Black
Krrsantan. Yeah.
So is he like part of this now, like part of his gang, or is he like still? I have a suspicion that
he gave him a job.
The episode he like said
he gave him a job. He gave him a job.
Oh, yeah. All right. So he's part of it. Just like I predicted that he was going to be part of it, because you cannot leave him alone, because he's like such an awesome character now. He's like a fan favorite now, so you can't not have him be a part of exactly. Okay. I have respect for you because
during the Godfather scene when he's talking to all the crime lords, Black Krrsantan is there in the room. He's there as one of the people in the room. So he's standing there as one of the muscle. So right after the bar scene, we see the scene with him with all the people around the table, which also was, again, he didn't smack anyone around, but he did show strength here by deciding to have the dinner on top of the pit where the Rancor is. So that they were like, why should we do anything? And the Rancor starts to grab up from the thing.
What prevents us all from killing you and taking what we want?
Easy boy.
That was definitely more of a show of his strength than he showed at all in the first 3 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely like that kind of Godfather-ish type of part. But I was just thinking in my mind, I've seen so many gangster movies and stuff like that, whether or not they're going to just pull the Michael Corleone type of deal where he's going to be like, oh, I really want... I'm just going to eliminate them all, pretty much. And I just wonder if he's going to do something like that in some ways, because Fennec did ask him, can you trust them? But then Boba Fett was basically saying it's in their best interest to stay neutral and to not intervene in our war with the Pikes. But you don't know. You just, like I said, you don't know whether or not he's gonna. But the thing is that it's very interesting is whether or not he's going to pull that Michael Corleone thing where he's going to eliminate everybody and just take over the whole planet by himself. So it'll be fascinating to see if he does do that with the acquired muscle. We're speculating that Din Djarin will return and he'll have some added muscle to him. And one other thing that came up was that he did pull the arm out. So that was like the first time we've seen that a Wookiee pulled the arm out, because we talked about it in Star Wars. It's been talked about in Star Wars. Han Solo talked about that. So it was the first time on screen that we've seen that. So I was wondering if that was the most like badass scene, that or Obi-Wan slicing the guy in the cantina with the lightsaber. So I wonder which one is better for Nathan.
So the whole scene in the cantina was cool to me, and I didn't understand the full context of why he was so angry, because they just seemed to be having a good time. Just seemed to be having a good time or whatever. But I later found out today that if you remember when one of their species was bringing a tribute to Boba Fett in the first episode. He brought like a pelt, and that's a Wookiee pelt. So apparently that species hunts Wookiees. So that's why he was so angry just for their presence, because he seemed so angry that they were having a great time, and I think he was angry just because he knows that they hunt Wookiees. So didn't really matter what she said. And she did, and Boba said it was nice, it was worth a shot. It doesn't really matter, because he wanted to rip off one of their arms just because of who they are and what they do to their hits.
I wondered about that as well, because I couldn't figure out why he was so upset either. But that's an important bit of information.
Just their existence and the fact that they were happy was annoying to him, because, as I said, they hunt Wookiees. So in the first episode, you saw one of them give as a tribute the pelt of interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so that was that whole exchange was pretty tense, and we like you said, Colin, we got to see what Han said in, I think, the first episode. Sorry, not the first episode. I guess now it's the fourth episode that Wookiees pull people's arms off,
and we saw that. So
we saw Budless arm off, and also apparently that species can grow back arms, so it's not as fatal as.
So it's not. It's not even like the Obi-Wan slicing the guy's arm off type of thing.
Yes.
Like, it's not that where, if you have ever seen. So one other thing is that Robot Chicken does very good like parodies of Star Wars, and so they did a whole story about that guy that got his arm chopped off by Obi-Wan, and it was such a brilliant sketch. I highly recommend if either you haven't seen that one. It's Robot Chicken Star Wars. It's just so brilliant. It's on YouTube. It's so brilliant. It goes through a whole kind of daily, like, it's a typical day of the guy. And then it just ends up him being like the most downtrodden, bad luck type of individual there is. And it just completely changes the whole context of the whole. If you see the original Star Wars, it completely changes the whole context of the whole thing. If you see that parody of it, it's just so funny.
Before we wrap up, any other things that I missed from this episode? Anything else that you guys want to talk about? We talk.
No, you go ahead, Condra.
I was gonna say with Bob, you sort of where he realizes, or you get a sense of what his purpose is.
Yes.
He talks about his time
with the Tusken.
Fennec Shand says the Tusken Raiders made him weak, and he's like, no, they made me strong. and
Yeah.
he doesn't want to be, that realization that he doesn't want to be anybody's hired hand anymore, because, you know, the people who hire you make mistakes.
Yeah.
They don't care about your life. You're just a weapon to them. And I forget how he phrased it.
He said it's hard to survive long in this world without a tribe.
No. It's made me strong. You can only get so far without a tribe.
Which is great.
Yes. Yeah. So I thought that was okay. This is what he's all about now, and where he's headed. And it just encapsulated everything that's been sort of peeping through. And now you see he actually articulates what he wants. And Fennec, I guess, she plays just really tough, but she does seem to buy into it in some respects, as he does pledge to be loyal to her and to fight for her.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, at this point, they both had near-death experiences, so that maybe they are both reassessing things. But the paths that they the paths that they were on, rather, basically led to their deaths. Both of them would have been dead. Like, he's lucky that he got out of that because of his armor. Otherwise, he would have died. Yeah. She's lucky that she got out of that because he happened upon her. So the paths that they were on are just going to lead to their deaths again. So I think they're both reassessing a different way of doing things. Yeah.
I'll be very interested. One last thought is that I'll be very interested to see what the Pikes are going. We didn't see the Pikes that much in this episode, and what type of tricks are they going to have up their sleeves in order to counteract or fight in this war for Tatooine. So it'd be very interesting to see how they're building it. It's almost as though I talked about it last week. It's almost like though it's like Dune. In some ways, it's like that. Very curious to see where that leads us as well.
Yeah, I think the only last thing I mentioned is that they sort of changed the name of Slave One because it's Disney. He says that he has to go and get the fire spray, which is apparently the model of the ship. I don't think he would have named it. He would have said the model of the ship. He would have said the name of the ship, which is Slave One. But they I think that because the name of the ship was Slave One, they kind of Disneyed around it and called it by the model, which is an interesting choice. They could have just said that he could have just said I don't want it to be named Slave One anymore because I've evolved. But she didn't know what it was named before, so I guess it would have been clunky or whatever. But it was a lot of people on the internet are annoyed right now because they renamed the ship from 40 years ago to Fire Spray. But like I said, that's the model of the ship. So it wasn't a ship that he like Jango Fett built. It was a ship that he bought, and apparently that's the model of the ship, the Fire Spray. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get a new name for the ship. We haven't seen the ship for the entire season, in the present day anyway. So I don't know where it's parked. Probably in the place where he stole it. Maybe that's where it is right now. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 3 episodes because now that they don't have to juggle back and forth, and they've set up a lot of things that like a lot of Chekhov. They have like Chekhov guns like scattered all over the place that they have to in the next couple episodes. And I guess we got a little bit of that with Krrsantan being one of his goons now because we knew that when he let him go, he was gonna show up later.
Oh yeah,
so
of course. Yeah.
The Rancor is definitely going to show up as part of the end scenes as well. We're going to see Din Djarin, so it'll be interesting the next 3 episodes, I think.
Yeah, but who do you think is going to be the big reveal? Because we knew that in Mandalorian season 2, the big reveal, we knew who the huge reveal was. I think that the huge reveal in season 1 was Grogu.
Yeah.
And they're building up to it. So if Din Djarin's going to come in the next episode, there's got to be someone that's going to be bigger than that.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think that even though Dave Filoni is going to be writing co-writing the 6th episode, I don't think he's going to bring Ahsoka. So why would Ahsoka be there? She doesn't care about this crime lord building an empire. She's not a Jedi because she quit the Jedi Order before Order 66. Otherwise, she would be dead. But she still has the same morality, so I don't think she cares enough to show up in the episodes. But I don't know, we'll see. I guess we'll see. I think Din is definitely going to show up, but I don't know who else. Do you know a little bit more about the first 3 I keep saying episodes, but the first 3 movies than I do. I know that they also episode is in their name, but the first 3 movies, I don't know.
I think that most of the people are either dead or dead pretty much, except for Max Rebo, who's in the
yeah.
Who's in the
And we did get a confirmation that
yeah,
is Max, because she
that's Max. That's Max. It was Max because the lady said play it again. You know, she said something about play it again, it's Max, or something like that. So it's Max. But how he survived, who knows? Because he was on the barge. So I don't know how he survived. Could be another Max. But anyways, could be. Yeah, but I'm not quite sure as to who might show up in terms of, that's why I want to ask, because I do.
Wasn't Bib on the board?
Yes.
Probably a bunch of people survived. They were probably thrown off by the blast. I think only Jabba was really killed. I think he was not just killed by the blast. Wasn't he killed also by
strangled by Leia? So in any case, I'm guess if they were going to go a Jedi route, I don't know, or it could be some character from one of the legends, from one of the non-canon things that might show up, that might give them fan service, or it could be one of the characters from the animated, like Rebels or even Clone Wars. It could be that. So
I'd rather someone from Clone Wars or Rebels or the Bad Batch show up, because it has to make sense within the context of the show. Jedi's don't have to show up everywhere. We know about Jedi's because the movies are focused on the Jedi's, but they've established inside of the universe that Jedi's are so few that people think of them as a myth. So them showing up all the time is basically bad storytelling. If they show up everywhere in every story that they decide to tell, I don't need a Jedi to show up, but it would be cool to see someone from either the Clone Wars or the Bad Batch show.
So I would hazard a guess it might be Sabine Wren, because there has been some speculation about her being casted already. So it could be her that shows up at the very end or for a post credit or something that sets up the Ahsoka series. That could be the biggest reveal, I would say.
Sabine is from the Rebels.
She's the Mandalorian.
She's
the Mandalorian from Rebels.
From Rebels, yes. She's the one who painted her armor. Maybe she cares about Boba Fett. Like Din cares about Boba Fett because he fought with Boba Fett, but I don't know. Yeah. I guess we'll see. Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap up?
I think that's pretty much it for me.
All right, that is what we thought, but we are interested to hear what you think. So please join the conversation by commenting down below, and we will see you next week. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.